It's no surprise that Chris Drury is looking to make a huge splash at this year's NHL entry draft as well as free agency, and his job may have just gotten easier as a star winger has just become available. That and some more Rangers free agency targets in this episode of Rangers Digest. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 80% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel, and we're hovering around 1,000 subscribers, so thank you so much for that. And like I said, you don't want to miss out, so hit that subscribe button. But we're going to jump right into it. Of course, the forward I'm talking about, and somebody that Chris Drury should have interest in, absolutely should have interest, or at least kick tires on, is Jeff Skinner. All right, Jeff Skinner was just bought out this morning by the Buffalo Sabres, and they are expected to buy out. This tweet is a little bit older. He has been bought out by the Buffalo Sabres for the remaining 3 years on his contract. Now, this is very, very interesting, and a lot of Rangers fans are calling for the Rangers to sign Jeff Skinner now at a lower cap hit. This is a guy who can really help out the team, honestly, and he's a great winger still, just not for the cap hit he was making. So now if you can get him for a much lesser cap hit, right, if you're talking maybe $3 million, $4 million, because he is getting a little bit up there in age as well, this could be a pretty good player for the Rangers. Like, he still put together some pretty decent point totals and goal totals, and we'll get to his stats in a second, for the Buffalo Sabres, but his $9 million cap hit made it almost a ridiculous prospect at one point, right? And you thought that the Sabres were going to have to go down with that. But now it's very interesting. I wonder if Chris Drury has any interest in this player. This really spikes my interest personally. And from JFresh, I love JFresh. I love all their charts and their in-depth models for the game. Jeff Skinner will be bought out by Buffalo. He's a very efficient goal scorer. He's a strong chance creator, especially off the rush, which I don't know if that's something the Rangers necessarily need help with in that area, but again, this is a great player still. He's an inconsistent playmaker, not much of a puck carrier. He's agile, but not a fast skater, but his skating is very good, actually. Like this says, he's very agile. He's just not the quickest player, and he's uninvolved defensively or on the forecheck with little physicality. Now, that's the one thing I would say in this entire ordeal that might throw this off. Maybe you want a forward that's a little bit better defensively. Maybe you go after a Marsh or so, but still, I think Jeff Skinner is going to be very cost effective. So I wonder if you at least take a look at it, especially if you have a guy like Capo Caco going out the door. This is a guy that you can sign for a much lesser cap hit that could help your second line, third line. Like, maybe you can figure out where to put him. I don't think he's going to make that much on his next contract, but anyway, very interesting. And if you take a look at his JFresh chart, I mean, still a very useful player. Like mentioned, this is a guy who's not going to play defense for you whatsoever, okay? And the Buffalo Sabres were not great in that category at all. His time on ice and his usage lends to the fact that he may be a third liner, right? And like I mentioned, I don't think his contract is going to be anything too crazy. Like I mentioned too, he's getting up there in age. He's 32. He's going to be 33. We'll get to his stats in a minute, but great. He's an elite. He is borderline elite at offense, all right? Like, still, right? Borderline. And like you can see here, he could be useful on a second power play unit, maybe even a first power play unit. Who knows? The Rangers power play was very good last year, but maybe you decide to shuffle it up a bit because, again, the third round wasn't great. It certainly wasn't great. And we'll take a look at Jeff Skinner's stats right now. Last season, 24 goals, and that was down from the last couple seasons. He's put together a couple 30-goal seasons as of late, even into his 30s. So still a very useful player. He didn't play every game. Last season, only 74 games played. He had 46 points. So he's good for about half a point a game, maybe a little bit more than that, right? Every season. He's a pretty even player, pretty even output, I should say, with goals and assists. But again, he's not necessarily the best playmaker. I wouldn't acquire him for his playmaking skills necessarily, but this could be a player that could chip in here on the Rangers on a good offensively minded team, right? This is a guy who could make a difference in his time on ice too, right? Like his usage, he is a valuable player. It might be higher on other teams or worse teams, but if he was to come to New York, maybe that's a third line player. It's a pretty interesting prospect, right? I think that's an interesting thing to look at. But to move aside from Jeff Skinner, and let me know in the comments what you think of Jeff Skinner as an option. Again, like I said, I don't think his contract's going to be too much, maybe a couple years. I think you give that a look. I think that could be an interesting option. I just don't know, if the contract gets a little too ridiculous. I don't know if that's something the Rangers should necessarily target because, again, a little bit on the softer side, as some people would like to say, right? And I don't even think he's ever played in the playoffs, actually. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I think you at least see what's going on with Jeff Skinner. I think that could be an interesting option. But I wanted to hit another free agency target for the New York Rangers, and that is Tyler Bertuzzi. A lot of people, I see the comments, guys. I see the comments. A lot of you have been wanting Tyler Bertuzzi. It's going crazy all over social media. This is the type of player that the Rangers could use. We'll break it down right now. So this is from NYR Louis. Great follow on Twitter again. Tyler Bertuzzi is a pretty good play driver at 5-on-5. I think he would somewhat be an improvement to some of the problems the Rangers have faced over the past 2 to 3 seasons offensively. Not for the reason people are suggesting, as some people just want to get tougher. Now, Tyler Bertuzzi is getting tougher. If you are to get Tyler Bertuzzi, you're going to get tougher, right? He's rough around the edges, and what he did for Toronto last year, especially in the playoffs, neutralizing Brad Marchand, even though the Leafs lost and that was a complete disaster for them. He neutralized Brad Marchand. He's a tough player. He gets to the gritty areas, right? He's the type of guy that could help the Rangers. Now, the only thing is his projected contract is a 6x6, somewhere in that area. That's a lot of money, especially for the Rangers. A lot of guys getting older, a lot of guys making a lot of money, north of $8 million, right? So you're going to have to move money out if you want Tyler Bertuzzi long term. It just won't make sense, especially with you having to sign Shesterkin coming up just next season. So lots to think about there. He is the type of player I think would absolutely help the New York Rangers. He is a play driver, right? Or can be on his line. Tough, like I said. We'll take a look at his stats too. And keep in mind with his stats, right? He played almost every game for the Toronto Maple Leafs last year. About half a point a game player, but his first half of the season was horrendous. He could not get it going. I think he had 6 goals heading into January. So really turned it on in the second half, finished with 21 goals, 22 assists, was used on the power play a little bit. So he can be an option on the power play as well. Again, like I mentioned, you don't want to, shift too many things around because, it did work for the most part, but he's only turning 30. So it could be a decent option. But that contract, like I mentioned, at a 6x6, that's getting a little hairy at the end of the contract. He's going to be 36. Of course, he wants a contract to walk him almost to retirement. So the back half of that contract would be pretty bad. But this is a guy who can maybe potentially help you get over that hump. He's a tough player. He plays the game the right way, can chip in for goals. And like I said, he had a great second half, and he can be a neutralizing type player in the playoffs, right? When the Panthers were having their way with the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Final, he's a guy who can step in and kind of take care of the theatrics and let the big guys go to work, score the goals, right? He can be the physical presence. Now, not everything falls on him, but he would be a very interesting option. So let me know in the comments what you think of, first of all, Jeff Skinner, just bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. Is he an option for the New York Rangers? Do you think Chris Drury would have some interest there? I'm not saying he's going to be a top-line player, but he can help in certain situations. I still think he's very useful for his age and if at a lower cap hit, of course, at a much lower cap hit. And let me know in the comments what you think of Tyler Bertuzzi. I think it could be a very interesting option. It was also noted today that he's going to test the free agency market. He's not going to re-sign right away with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so he's going to touch that free agency market. So that should be very interesting to keep an eye on. Will he come to the New York Rangers? Let me know your thoughts on if he will and if he should. Honestly, is he if he's a good fit? A lot of fans seem to believe it. I've been seeing the comments, so pretty interesting. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.